Hello, and welcome to Inebriated Factual Tales of the Past, with your host, me. Let's begin. So, here's the story of the Klondike Gold Rush. The year is 1896 in Seattle. A large barge carrying a ton of gold comes sailing into the harbor, and everyone is like, whoa, that's a lot of gold. And then another one comes in, and another, and soon people are like, yo. And so they do, and like crazy mass numbers, and people just start pouring out of Seattle and start heading north. Some of them take steamships to get up there. Some of them just grab whatever boat they can get their hands on. It's crazy. People start dying off like right away, like absolutely intense. But the gold fever is so crazy that it's like Black Friday at Best Buy, like anything goes, doesn't matter. So eventually masses make their way up to Skagway, and they begin the long journey up into the Canadian wilderness. Let's talk about Skagway. Skagway's fun. So there is a guy up there, his name is Soapy Smith. This guy is a con artist whose real name is Jefferson Randolph Smith. Yeah, and he's wanted in like 3 states, for fraud. So he's come up and he's reinvented himself, and now he's the town mayor, and he's like, hey, I'm Soapy Smith, and you should trust me and give me your money because I'm totally legit the mayor of this town, and I'll make sure that the government doesn't come down on you. And so he was secretly like, yo, I'm gonna take these suckers for fools, and no one is gonna check me on it. Yeah, that's what he said. He was kind of a messed up dude, and he committed a lot of fraud. But he did get shot a few years later, but it's not important. Hey, no, that's my dog. My dog's here. What is important is the next leg of the journey. The gold rush, the peeps, the next part. Yeah, that's right. They had to get to Lake Bennett. Yeah, Lake Bennett, up north. So there's 2 ways to get to Lake Bennett from Skagway. The first one is called the Chilkoot Trail. You guys may have heard of that one. It's a long path that goes over the mountains, and a lot of people died on it. We're not going to talk about that one. We're going to talk about White Pass. White Pass was less steep, but like equally or twice as much treacherous. Also, they had to have 1,000 pounds of provisions with them if they wanted the Canadians to let them through. So the Chilkoot Trail had its own stories of horror and people that died, but White Pass is cool, and so we're going to talk about it. So White Pass was a mountain pass that led through a super narrow and deadly gulch. In some places it was a sheer cliff onto your left, my left, sheer cliff, and a 500-foot drop down on your right. And there was like 3 feet of path to walk on in some places. And that's manageable if it's just you, but if you got a horse carrying on all of your stuff, yeah, a lot of dead horses. People would just be walking along the path and be like, oops, there goes my horse. And there were hundreds of people and horses killed here, so eventually it became known as Dead Horse Gulch. And yeah, that's about all there is to it. Wow, this is depressing. Moving on. So they got to Lake Bennett, and most of the people that got there a little bit too late because winter was about to set in. Some people got down the Yukon River, but most people were stuck on the shores of Lake Bennett, and it was bad. It was like Oregon Trail level squalor. Squalor's it's a weird word. Squalor mixed with testosterone. They had dysentery and scurvy, and their meals were basically your 3 B's. You got your beans, your bacon, and your bread, and that was it. So super depressing. This is all super depressing. Why did we pick this topic? I don't know why I'm asking these questions. My group can't hear me. It's just me. It's literally just me. So eventually the ice melted, and the boats and the people people build boats. The boats that people had been building were ready to be sailed, except they weren't, because people would put them in the river and go sailing down for the Klondike, but a lot of them would capsize and more people died. But some people didn't die, and that's what we're here for. The ones that didn't die made it to the end and were like, woohoo, we did it, we made it to the Klondike, we're gonna be rich, y'all. But they weren't. In the end, it was more like, woo, sad. Most of the claims had already been taken and staked by the people who had already been there since the gold rush began in Dawson City. That's the town where the Klondike was happening. And it was soon filled with thousands of destitute miners who made it all the way to find that their dreams were basically amounting to nothing. So this is all super sad. And it's kind of the end of the story too. Is there anything cool that happened in this story? No, we can talk about Klondike Kate. She's cool. So, turns out if you want to get in rich, if you want to get rich in a gold rush, what you do is you open up a shop. The people who sold the shovels and the boat rides and the food, etc., they were the ones who really banked off of this gold craze. So there were miners that were mostly out of money by the time that they got to Dawson, and so they traded their hard-won gold to get whatever they could get their hands on to survive. So you have a town full of sad, depressed men who were looking for anything to do to brighten the mood. And in comes Kathleen Eloise Rockwell, Klondike Kate. This woman got stupid rich off the miners by dancing. That's right. I know what you were thinking. Nope. She was a performer. She had her whole troupe with her. They danced in the saloon that Klondike Kate owned, and it was great. In fact, her real skill wasn't even in dancing, it was in conversation. She was so adept at talking to the men that they would often just straight up pay her a piece of gold for having a conversation with her. And they'd be like, oh, Miss Kate, I'm so lonely. Won't you talk to a poor miner? And then she'd be like, oh, sure, honey, why don't you just sit down? And they would literally hand her thousands of dollars in gold adjusted for inflation. And just to have a conversation with this woman, like, she made it out all right. Way to go, Klondike. Unfortunately, that is kind of the best thing that happened in the gold rush. It's estimated that about 100,000 people left Seattle in search of gold. 30,000 made it to Dawson. A few hundred actually made it in the green, and maybe less than that, a handful came out of the whole thing making an actual, like, filthy rich profit. So not exactly betting odds. And that's the moral of the story. Don't become a gold miner. Okay, I'm gonna go lay down. Come on, Mocha, go to bed.